Oh, it's gonna need that. By the way. No, maybe no need. Oh, it's a, yeah.
Can't.
Just to hang on to.
I can only do one thing at a time. Sitting down or do it. Well, thank you, gentlemen, for the wonderful introductions. First thing I want to say is that we did not consider ourselves heroes. Like the colonel said, it was a job, and we did that job pretty well. With the 710th Squadron, 447th Bomb Group, and the 8th Air Force, faced in England during World War II. In 1944, I flew 35 combat missions into Germany and Nazi-occupied territory. Back then, Japan, Germany, and Italy were not our friends. Japan had bombed Pearl Harbor, killing over 2,400 sailors and servicemen. We declared war on Japan the following day. And 3 days later, Japan's allies, Germany and Italy, declared war on us. So there we were, unprepared, faced in what was going to be the largest, most destructive conflict ever to occur on this planet. I, like thousands of others, volunteered. I enlisted in the Army Air Force Aviation Cadet Corps. Was accepted, went 9 months in pilot training, got my wings and commission, and was appointed to be a pilot on the P-17. At first, I was disappointed because I thought with my size and everything, I'd go a little bit smaller. But after a few missions in that airplane, one realized that this is where I belong. We did our job. We trained as a 10-man crew in North Texas for about a month. Then flew over to the UK, ending up in a small town named Rattleston, Suffolk County, where the 447th was based. After some orientation and indoctrination, we became operational. We'd be asleep in our Nissan huts, they call it in England, closet hut. Sometimes as early as 3 in the morning, the door would fly open, the light would come on, and the CQ, the charge of quarters, would be standing there yelling at us. Up and down, fly boy, rise and shine, up your back and out of the sack. Come on, let's go, up. That's good. What? One morning, a bombardier got tired of us, and he threw a shoe at him. It's like, he wasn't trying to kid him, he wasn't skidding across the floor. But when he went out, he said, I hope your accuracy improves somewhat later today. I think that was the only time we laughed getting ready for combat. The next thing would be going to the mess hall and trying to eat breakfast at 3:30 in the morning. I would try, because with the freezing temperature, that's what you're going to eat for about 8 or 9, maybe 10 minutes. Hours. And so the next thing would be briefing. We all head to the briefing room where it's the commanding officer would tell us where we were going, live, what kind of bombs we would be carrying, the weather forecast, and position each one of us would be flying in an 18 aircraft formation. We usually flew 18 aircraft with 3 squadrons of 6 each. Here, a lead, high, and low squadrons. And always bombing something that was helping Hitler stay in the war. Always in the daytime. After the briefing, we got in trucks that took us to our aircraft that were parked in the perimeter of the field. The ground crew had already gone through all the inspection or everything, but we were supposed to do it too. So we did a cockpit set, and we ending up with the engines. And if everything looked good on the engines, We gave the ground to the signal to pull the chocks out in front of the wheels. We would release the brakes and taxi out to the takeoff runway, where the lead aircraft would be poised, ready to go from a signal from the tower. At a specific time, the tower would fire a flare. He would start his takeoff run, and we would follow about every 15 seconds and get in the position that we were designated to be in over the airfield. When we were all together, climbing at the amazing rate of 1,000 feet. Here I go. 500 feet, abandoned that. Now, we have fire by go up to 60,000 and back down again, and 5 to 6 times at that times. But we were all loaded with usually general purpose bombs, 500 pounds, and 3,600 gallons of aviation, 100 octane fuel. Imagine that, 3,600. And off we go over the North Sea. And as it was before D-Day, if we were going to Germany, we usually enter Europe over the Netherlands. We'd get some anti-aircraft fire because it was occupied. Not too accurate usually, and kind of sparse, but a precursor of what we're going to be facing later on. The navigator had points marked on his lap called charted black, where navigators previously had fired them and fire upon it, and he marks that spot. And our navigator was supposed to take us around those spots so we don't get fired on, hoping that the 88 millimeter would stay where they were and not moved around. We're headed for a location called the initial point, IP. And when we get there, there has been no speech in the preppings on the radio, and not even inside the airplane unless something important is going on. The lead aircraft turns for the first time towards the target. And here we are, all 16, all 18, going in the same direction, tucking it in, nice formation, at about 25,000 feet. And as it was expressed before, it could be 45 to 50 below zero. A lady once asked me, when I was volunteering in Seattle, how full was it inside the airplane? I said, 49 below zero. The pilots got hot air blowing on us. I would dress not much for it than I have on now. The top turret gunner directly behind me was casing 45, 50 below. With electrical heated suits like all of the others. You plug it in, you have a rheostat, and I never heard any complaints. But we're now on what they call the bomb run. The lead aircraft has been on autopilot all this time. So he switches the lateral control of the autopilot of the airplane to the northern bound site that this bombardier is using. So when the bombardier makes that course correction, maybe over this way, the airplane automatically follows and picks up the bearing just by turning a wheel on the bogie setting. We're all flying along, the sky is beautiful, and suddenly it looks like the sky's exploding. You had black pumps of smoke appearing everywhere. But when one goes through, you fly through the concussion, and you hear pieces of steel tearing holes into the aluminum skin of your airplane. A bad sound. And what do? Well, we keep on. The 8th Air Force was never turned back by the enemy action. Weather, yes, but not enemy action. I would try to stay calm, try to think of my training, kind of keep soft hands on the controls and my position in the airplane. See, you had a Nazi gunners on the ground, almost 5 miles down, and 3 and 6 gun batteries firing shells of 88 and 105 millimeter shells that'll go as high as 35,000 feet. They know that their shells will go about 1,000 feet a second. The rangefinders establish our altitude. So if we are in 25,000 feet, they set their fuses to explode in 25 seconds. And if we're here, we're the air fire, where will we be in 25 seconds? So they have that thing, they fire into the air where they think we're going to be, like that convergence. And they were more 5 years before we got over there, and they would come awfully close sometimes, and sometimes too close. And it just goes on. Cells everywhere. You can't do a thing. Finally, the bombardier yells bombs away. He has figured anything correctly. He goes with the type of bombs we're using. So it takes a certain parabolic arc when you drop it. And the altitudes, ground speed, all these things have to be put into that bomb sight, almost like a computer. So when he yells bombs away, out come his bombs with ripe ribbons tied to them. Sometimes there was a smoke bomb to start with it. All the other bombardiers had to pick them on a toggle switch. And when they see that and hear it, they push that. And so you have, if it's a factory or a small location, he had 216 500-pound bombs all going simultaneously. You can miss 200. It's 16 of usually wipe out whatever you're going to enter. And also, sometimes it gets a location like a railroad yard or oil refinery, a wide span. They come out in a train, and you've seen pictures of them coming out like that. About every half second, a bottom comes out. So when they hit the ground, they go right along, they walk right through your charge. So we can't see it, and the B-17 has a beautiful Famars wing. Saved my life a couple times. But when you turn to go home, usually west, and you drop the wing with the projection, and you can look down and say, yeah, that was pretty good down there. Hard to see 5 miles down, but there were the smoke and where you thought you should be. Bombing oil refineries was my favorite. For many reasons. You would go usually in a combat wing, at least 2 bomb groups. The first one would be dropping the big ones, that's 500 pounds. The one behind would be thermite and magnesium. And as most of you probably know, you cannot extinguish the thermite. You can put it underwater and that thing's going to burn until it's ready to stop. They dropped that on the field. It should kind of messed up a little bit. And there's storage tanks all around the factory. Thousands of gallons of gasoline in those storage tanks. And again, here again, when we turn home and see that black smoke coming out, that oil refinery has been destroyed, and just, it feels so good about it. That means fewer submarines, not next week, but next month. We're strategic. Fewer submarines, fewer trucks, fewer Luftwaffe come here and trying to show us them. And I can think of another mission where we went to Lyset to take out a Messerschmitt assembly plant, Arabic aircraft assembly plant. And again, we're starting down the bomb on. But instead of seeing the flak coming up around that, it came up right under my squadron. right, and it moved my airplane in the air. A loud roar, and by gosh, it scared. Yeah, I was really frightened for about 10 or 15 seconds until I started swearing at myself. Off as a mess, no matter what I said, nobody compared unless I pushed a button. And I got out of it, I was angry. And another shell came up, maybe 300 or 400 feet ahead of us. I looked over, you missed me. I knew shouting at him wasn't really short in the water, but after all, a friend of mine said, you were only 21, you still had 4 years to go on your brandy. But you want to do something, you can't throw anything out, you just have to weather it out. And that calls for how they're handled here. I have a certain way. When we had a shell come up about 100 feet away, the one through the concussion, and my brain said if that had been a second later, I'd be on my way down. This is a day you may not go home. Things like that rush into your brain. I said, no. I said, that's fired at the right time, and everything's okay. And it calmed me down. But I remembered the first volley was right under the ball sphere and then the radio roll. And I kept everything like this. I said, pilot the ball over. I said, okay, Art, yeah, but can you be a little more careful up there? The radio man said, I'm okay too, in case anyone's interested. These guys are cracking jokes and they're getting shot at. But that was for the mission. It was a bit bad. A friend of mine had his radio man shot right out the side of an airplane. But he was not wounded enough not to be able to pull his whipcord, and he floated down and was a prisoner for the rest of the war. But I could go on all day, things, these truths coming into my head. Somebody said, well, can't you take notes? I said, well, I might be able to write them down, but then I can't read them. I got the little eye problem that keeps me from driving and keeps from reading. But we became friends, but not real close friends. As soon as you get a real big close friend, then obviously he's not there the next day sometimes. And I used to talk about one of my bad ones. I don't do it anymore, but I started reliving it. And that was a plane where I had one I'd made a friend would fall off right in front of me. And I don't even want to think about it. All 10 men were killed. But as a Colonel Nelson, 26,000. I used to say less than 30 because I read 30, but I'm still over there under white crosses. And that's why I'm here. At the Museum of Flight in Seattle, I try to talk about the 8th Air Force. The only way I can do that is tell them what I went through, what I saw, what I heard. When I get into what I heard, I tell them this. I can't attest to this because it may not be true. Usually they were up to a point. That Berlin mission, for instance, it was put out that we lost 48 B-17s on that one mission. It was the maximum Kepler, where a lot of bomb groups were going for different targets in the Berlin area. Then it went to 28 to be published. They didn't want people to read 40Es. And also B-24s, they put that in too. So I figured might have been about 38 airplanes. 380 men. Some parachuted because when that V-17 gets into a spin, you're pretty well locked into whatever's this anyway. This isn't, you might be in at the time. Centrifugal course. This blows it down. But thousands of us came home like me. Not because we were better pals, but this went through the war. And pretty proud of the dent we put into Hicker's lunch. And I had one occasion that I think it was pretty good. When I asked for when I asked for questions, a Bowen one time asked mentioned to me that what is the prettiest thing you saw while flying a B-17? And I said, a burning oil refiner. She was not expecting that. She was an art teacher from the high school. I explained it to her, that a B-17 was a warplane, and I wouldn't be into the because the country was under war, things like that. She would not care. I think I've answered your questions.
Dick, maybe you can tell us how you signed up, how you went into the service.
Yeah. This is non-combat. When I turned 19, at that time, you had to be 19 to enlist in the Air Force. I went out to Camp Jackson in August, South Carolina, picked up a form that has to be filled in and signed by a parent or guardian. I took it home, put it in front of my mother. My father had passed away this couple of years before. She looked at it and she shoved it back. If I signed that, I'd be signing your death warrant. You know, everybody was afraid of airplanes at that time. A few years earlier, you hear a plane going around. Airplane, no. But I pushed that in front of her with a pen. 3 months for breakfast. Finally, I stood there and said, Mom, look at me. 5'7" 3/4, 135 pounds. What chance am I going to have on the ground? You know I'm going to be drafted. Not a word, she signed it. I took it off, passed both exams, and like I mentioned, went to 9 months of training. Yeah, the one I was going to tell about getting those. When my time was over, my tour was finished, and said 5 months, 35 hours. I went to Glasgow and got on the Queen Elizabeth at the time, the largest ocean liner in the world. There were about 2,000 of us at least on that ship. When we finally reached New York Harbor, were the vans flying, confetti flying, parade? No. But when we saw the Statue of Liberty at Cookshire, all of around. And when I got off, standing there waiting for a bus to come from Camp Shanks, I had a duffel bag on my shoulder and a couple bags down here. A little boy, he couldn't have been more than 8 or 9 years old, selling newspapers. He came on and said, "Paper, mister?" I said, "I can't read." "Well, you can look at the pictures, ain't you big shrink you?" That was my welcome to the United States.
I don't know if you remember some of the guys that flew over Germany, but I have a relative that flew 32 missions over it. and I wondered if you remembered him as his name was Billy Alman.
No, but I'll tell you why. There were thousands of us, believe it or not. Imagine there are at least 26,000 that were killed just in a matter of 3 years. And 6 now, yeah, 3. Everybody wanted to be in the air crew. I actually commanded 2 air crews. I'm the only one alive today. And I didn't even know all of them in my own squadron. I didn't make up a point and willing though. It's bad enough going through missions and rather than to see people killed that you know.
You might have answered my question. In your 35 missions, you had 2 different crews?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, the first I could go part of the second one was the Tattoo in the West Sea.
What year were you deployed?
In combat, 1944. And our first mission was May 18th, 1944. The last one was September 7th.
Praise God for that.
Sir, my name's Tom Campbell. My dad, Jackson Campbell, flew 38 missions as a tail gunner out of England. He survived. They did get shot down a couple times, but things he could not talk about. It's great to hear you talk about it because he had a difficult time. But he did talk about, and I didn't hear you talked about what you really liked seeing. There were 2 things that he did not like that while he was there. He really hated Brussels sprouts because it seemed like he got those all the time. And then also the weather. He was a constant battle because you flew a lot. You probably did too. It was early in the year, in January through April, and it was terrible. But those are the 2 things that he really disliked when he was there. I didn't know what you disliked most.
Well, I like Brussels sprout.
Colts?
And the weather that we had, it was in the summer, obviously. It was probably the best summer England ever had. We only had to take off twice in fog, I think. I can't remember it really. It did, but I'm talking while I was on the mission. It was pretty bad. That's a good question. I don't understand the 32 missions. He did get shot down, they said. Yeah, that's for the. I have one. Oh.
Yeah, you have, I have a question. What did you do after you got home as like a job?
About a mission?
What did you do when you got home to the United States
Oh,
after the war?
I went to art school and became a martial artist. When I was, my points got high enough, I had to either enlist in the Army Air Forces. It still wasn't the Air Force yet. Or is a good. And I sat there with the general asking me, what do you want to do? And I said, well, sir, would I still be flying? Oh, he'd be flying nose, but probably be flying a pencil. In other words, they wondered what was up here in my experience behind the desk. And they get calls like that. So I said, well, thank you, sir. You have opened the door. I'm going to sit there and be a commercial artist. And he said, well, I can leave you. I'll leave you. Goodbye. That's easy.
So I don't necessarily have a question, but I saw my first airplane when I was 2 years old and with B-17s flying over our house. and the pilot waved to me, and for 82 years now, I've been flying airplanes. Some of them were toys when I was a kid, but I've spent over 30 years in the Air Force as a pilot the entire time, and I can tell you there's nobody that the pilots in the United States Air Force admire more than they admire you and your fellow pilots. Thank you for your